Coach Howard, we appreciate you coming in today, man. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, good to be here. Happy to do it.
And you got a great baseball name there. I'm sure you've never heard that in the baseball circles before.
Yeah. There was a Ryan Howard that played for the Phillies. He's got a lot more money than I do now, but
Yeah.
good
He's
baseball
on,
name.
he's on The Office too. I remember that episode
Right.
where Jim went out to Philadelphia and got to meet Ryan Howard. So it was pretty
Right.
cool. So,
Right.
as far as baseball goes in our class, it's going to be the last thing that we're going to be covering. We've covered basketball, we've covered football and NFL, we've covered college sports, all sorts of different things in there. How would you describe the MLB, the history of the MLB to this country, to sports, to all of that?
Yeah, I think it's America's pastime. You go back to 1920s, 1930s. I think it was America's escape from a lot of wars early on in that century, and it's crazy how much it's evolved over the years. I think that if you class or anybody would look back at what the baseball players looked like, 1920s, 1930s, they looked like your average human being walking down the street. And nowadays, with the strength and conditioning and the nutrition and everything that's come along with athletes, these guys are monsters nowadays. And athletically, they've become so much more prepared for seasons. But like I said, it's America's pastime. It's been a part of this country since the beginning, and it was a great escape. I think that a lot of the greats, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, their careers were cut short, or they were having to stop their careers to go fight in wars and come back. So throughout the years with the statistics, you start looking at what some of these guys had to go through early on, and before there were planes and taking buses all across the country, playing 162 games a year. It's tough on the body, and these players nowadays have it easier as far as the travel goes than those back then.
Interesting. Yeah, it just feels like it's a sport. I went to Cooperstown 10 years ago or so, and it's just one of those sports. It feels like it's kind of entwined in American history as well as baseball history itself. And, baseball, MLB is the oldest league, and it's an interesting thing because, football is certainly the most popular sport from a rating standpoint. Basketball is up there as well. And they're saying possibly in 10 years, maybe even the Major League Soccer League will pass baseball to some degree in ratings and fanfare and all that stuff. What happened? Like, what is it about baseball that maybe just hasn't maybe kept up with modern times, or just isn't kind of getting the cultural zeitgeist that some of these other sports are getting?
Well, it's a slower paced game. I think that's the number one thing. And I think the game has gotten slower over the years because of statistics, and because, people are getting way more in depth into the numbers in the numbers game. So pitching changes, that's 5 or 6 minutes right there. And nowadays there's roughly, 5 or 6 pitchers that throw in a game sometimes. And so the pace of play, and I think that, as we've evolved in this country and technology has evolved, I think TikTok's a great example. I think it's what, 10 to 15 second clips,
Right.
of just nonstop action. And what you're getting in the NFL is not, hockey, soccer. The ball's always in play for the most part,
Right.
and it's easier to keep your attention on those games. And I think that as sports have become more popular, learning the game of baseball just from a fan standpoint, I think that players understand I like to say, the game inside the game. What pitches are you going to throw this hitter? If there's a runner on first, are we gonna bunt this guy over in this situation? And what kind of hitters do we have at the plate? Is it a power hitter? Is it a hitter that can consistently put the bat on the ball and is not a high strikeout guy? And there's a lot of decisions that are being made with every pitch and I think growing up playing baseball, you learn about these small games inside the games, and it's able to help you when you get older, keep your attention on the game because you understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I think nowadays, baseball, because it's slower, kids are moving to other sports to play, and they're not learning the small little intricacies inside the game, and it makes it for a boring game. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. When you don't understand kind of the pitch counts, and this just different situations that go on, it's baseball's a chess match. It's not checkers. There's a lot of things and a lot of thought that goes into the pitch you throw to a certain guy, and why you do that. And I'll be honest with you. I think the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and the MLBPA, basically the people that are in charge of the game, having kept up with the times as well as the NFL, the NHL, the NBA. So I think that there's a lot of room to grow. Right now, the Players Association and the owners are, basically on a stand hold right now. It's kind of a strike because the players are wanting different things than the owners are, and they're looking at it from two different aspects. Obviously, the players want the game to be faster paced. They want changes in the game, and they want to evolve with the times. And owners, are focused on money. You can definitely see both viewpoints, but something's got to change, definitely, to grab the attention and to pick up the pace of the game.
Well, for me, I mean, I was a public relations intern for the Chargers back in the 90s, and Dan Fouts was our guy. Like Dan Fouts, was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the 80s, but all of his records have been broken by Philip Rivers in the 2000s. And people would say he's not as good a quarterback as Dan Fouts was, but the game changed so much to be a passing league. It seems like other leagues do a better job of look, we don't care about historical records. We don't care about, what we want to do is compare you against people of your era. Whereas baseball, and even when they try to put forth rule changes, man, fans just lose their mind on social media, like putting the runner on second base in the extra innings, or you got to pitch to 3 batters in a row. It just feels like, to some degree, the leaders that are in charge, and also the fans just are so hesitant about, there's just such a conservative league. Are you worried that without rule changes or without some sort of major shift, maybe a pitch clock or something to speed up the game and get more actions, less strikeouts, less walks, we're going to potentially lose the younger generation from being fans of baseball?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's already started to happen. I mean, if you look at your just pull up any Major League Baseball roster and see how many Americans are on that team or on these teams, it's not going on. It's not happening. We're getting the majority of these teams are filled up with folks from the Dominican Republic, from Venezuela, and you can see it. We have an American, we have a Major League Baseball league that's in America, and it's filled with people from out of our country because of the interest. The interest level has dropped so much from kids in America. Yeah, so I am worried about it. No doubt.
Interesting. And and boy, my kids, we're big Padre fans. So we love Fernando Tatis Jr. from the DR as well. And so it's all these different players. So with the most recent labor strike, I mean, you have teams who have decided, like the Orioles, we are just not going to win. And by the way, Adley Rutschman went to my high school up in Oregon. So we're big,
awesome.
we're big Oriole, we're Padre fans, but we are quietly rooting for the Orioles too. But it's like the Orioles have decided, you know what? We can't compete with the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and we're not going to spend like that. That just seems like a silly thing to do. So we're going to spend $30 million a year on our payroll. So the players want a floor. They want better money for when Adley Rutschman gets to the majors. They want him to be compensated sooner. But the owners are like, no. In fact, they show the average pay for major league players has gone down since the last labor strike in 2016. It's like, what am I missing here? Why can't these two sides come together?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm on the side of the players here. I think that there's an extreme amount of greed that's going on from the ownership. I understand that, being an owner of a team, there's a lot of it's your personal money most of the time that's going through it. So it hits home a little bit harder. But I think that the way that our players in the minor league systems have been treated, and I think that's a big thing that goes on with it. I think that, Major League Baseball or baseball is one of the few sports that has a really in-depth, a lot of people playing in their farm system and their minor league systems.
Yeah.
And these guys are sleeping there's 4 guys sleeping in a 1-bedroom apartment. And nowadays it takes 3 or 4 years if you are, a great player, a great prospect to make it to the big leagues, because they want you to mature through the minor leagues, and it's just a tough life. It's a tough life. And I think that the owners are looking to give, they're not wanting to pay until play is proven at the major league level. And I think that's what you're seeing. And players are fighting back against that. I think that they think it's wrong that these players are coming up and their rookie years, they're having to play 3 good years, making very low pay, and they're bringing way more value to that ball club than what they're getting paid. So right. I'm definitely on the side of the players here. I think that something's got to break here, and one thing that Major League does is they have the #1 player union, #1 strongest union, I think, in the country. So I think that's a major benefit, and I think that our players union has been very successful in getting things done for our players, and I'm hoping that's going to be the same thing as well this year.
Well, and I thought, really recently with the Padres giving Tatis all that money, even before he was eligible for, arbitration and all that, and then Wander Franco getting all of the money he got prior to it. You see the guy from the Nationals who just got that offer before, but he just turned it down. 13 years at $350 million. It's unbelievable that they're doing that. But, it all started from this reserve clause that was something in the bane of Major League Baseball's existence for a while for the players, because basically this just said the owners can hold you as a player, and you can't test free agency if you're a really great third baseman and you're trying to come up with the Orioles and Brooks Robinson is the third baseman, you got nowhere to go. There's nothing you can do. You're going to stay in the minors, or you can't really move around. Or if you want to negotiate, you got to negotiate with the team itself to be able to do that. I mean, the reserve clause was just tantamount to ownership of these players. And once that was kind of taken away, what are your thoughts? I mean, some people say free agency ruined baseball. Do you agree, or do you feel like that things have gotten better for players?
I believe that things have gotten better for players. I think that free agency, like I said, I'm always going to be on the player side, I think, more than anything. But I think free agency has been a very good thing for the players. It allows them to take more ownership over their career. And it's like you said, Derek Jeter. I think everybody knows who Derek Jeter is. Well, if you're a few years younger and you were drafted by the Yankees in 1995 and you were a shortstop, I mean, you could be the greatest, the second greatest shortstop in the game, but guess what? You have the first one that's above you, and you're going to rot in AAA or the minor leagues for your entire career. So I think it gave guys like that a lot of opportunities. And there's still plenty of those stories. I've got 4 friends right now who one was in the Boston Red Sox organization when Nomar Garciaparra was coming through, and he was a AAA All-Star 6 years in a row and couldn't find a spot. And there was probably 15 other organizations that he could have probably gone and played and gotten his big league time, and now he's 48, and you got to realize these guys that are, he played, I think, 10 years of minor league ball. So he went to college for 1 year. That's not, night. So that could put you at 29 years old, and you're just entering the workforce. And you're entering the workforce with not a whole lot of money because you've been playing minor league ball. So you're having to start your life at the age of 30. So it's putting a lot of people in positions to make some tough decisions based on what they want their life to look like. And, everybody, I think a lot of people want to build families, and and you just can't do it on minor league pay. So I think that a free agency has given more ownership to the players. It's allowed them to kind of to be the number one advocate for themselves, and I think it's worked out.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, when I go back and ask people and they say, you know, hey, who's most influential in baseball history? And Jackie Robinson obviously will come to mind, and rightfully so. Babe Ruth, you know, Joe DiMaggio, different players. Very few people bring up Curt Flood. And, you know, Curt Flood challenged the reserve clause and essentially like ended his career by filing a lawsuit to challenge that reserve clause to be able to get free agency. I heard recently that he went to a major league clubhouse during spring training and got a standing ovation from the players. The players certainly know who he is. This guy gave up his career to fight the reserve clause to get free agency. Why do you think it is that most people don't know him and he was so impactful to the game?
You know, I think that most of your casual fans or most of your sports fans, they tune in to watch games and be entertained. I think that especially nowadays when you hear professional athletes complain about pay or complain about money, it's an immediate off switch because of the amount of money that the top players in each leagues are making. They're million. I mean, these guys are millions and millions. It's generational wealth they're making. But it's very easy to hone in on kind of what the upper echelon players are making. But man, you know, for every single one of those guys that are making that kind of money, there's other guys that have spent 10 years in minor league baseball and they're just trying to break through and get to the big leagues. And in those first years, they're, you know, obviously I think I think it's 650,000 or something now. So it's getting up there, but there's people to understand that's a lot of money to be the league minimum. But you know, you've also spent 7-8 years of your life making nothing. So
Right.
you know, it all evens out in the end. But I think that as far as that question goes, I think that, you know, your casual fan, they look at professional athletes as people that are very well off financially, because the ones that we see on TV and the ones that are promoted are very, very rich. But it's a quick tune out when you hear about people with a lot of money, and I hear athletes complain about their play.
I mean, the owners hated Curt Flood so much, they literally blacklisted him. And then in the 80s, the owners were so furious that they had to give millions of dollars out to these players that they were caught for collusion to not sign Andre Dawson after an MVP season and different things. And it's like, I mean, it seems like these players have had to work so hard to get, you know, I mean, you look at Manny Machado's contract, you're like, man, $300 million, but the steps that have to be taken from, you know, Curt Flood to Manny Machado, there's been a lot of progress made. And then to see them lose the progress in the last negotiation, and then now to be on strike again, trying to get it back. I wish there was a salary cap. I wish there was some kind of way to figure this out. But boy, the next thing here that we want to look at, and I don't know, my students even know what sabermetrics is. I had the privilege when I worked for the Padres back in '96 to work with Theo Epstein, who went on to go work for the Red Sox and work for the Cubs and win World Series for both of them under some of these sabermetrics ideas. How would you describe sabermetrics? How would you describe its impact in baseball?
I think the best way for me to explain it is you're attaching a numeric value that's not money. It's a statistical value on each player. And you know, I think Moneyball is probably the movie that really brought it to everybody's attention with the Oakland A's. Is they, like I said, they took it from a checkers game to where we just want the best players. Well,
Yeah.
you know, so a lot of these clubs and these owners can't afford just, you know, they're not the Yankees. They can't just go and pay the best player at every position to come. So it turned into a chess game. And the way that it works is they put a numerical or statistical value on each player. So they look at it as they really dove into the statistics, and as opposed to saying, well, this guy's a 290 hitter. Well, yeah, he's a 290 hitter, but he hits, you know, .082 against left-handers. So we can plug this guy in to face right-handed pitching in this situation, and it really I think it did a lot for a lot of people's careers that people thought were washed up, and I think it did a lot for guys that had MLB experience, and had proven that they can play the game. But later on in the careers, their tools start to fall off. And as you get older, you get slower, maybe your arm strength goes away. Maybe you fought some injuries throughout your career, but you still have one tool, whether it be throwing, running fast. The biggest one in baseball, I think, is the hardest thing to do in sports, hitting. And it put value back into those guys to where maybe they're not going to be everyday starters, but we're going to look at the lineup and look at the pitcher we're facing, and we're going to go back and see, hey, this guy really does well against left-handed hitters. And then it can go even more in depth where, he's faced this pitcher 50 times and he's hitting, 380 off this guy. So I think it's changed the game. I think it's helped, I go back and forth on it because I think it slowed the game down terribly. Right. It's caused way more pitching changes. The ability for a pitcher to go and compete and just go beat whoever's gonna, whoever's gonna come up to bat has completely gone. I think it's strictly a matchup game in baseball nowadays. And that goes back to the pace of play. It's affecting the pace of play dramatically. And I think that's the biggest thing that people are seeing with it. And that's the biggest thing that needs to change.
Yeah. Do you see sabermetrics? Is that a thing that happens in the high school level, or is that just a higher level pro, maybe even college level kind of thing?
Yeah, it's not. We don't get into it at the high school level just because we don't have the amount of at bats. We don't have the amount of service time with these. But I think your average high school player, if they're a good player, they're gonna maybe start their junior and senior year in high school. If they're a great player, they may start before that. But I think that there has to be a lot of data taken in order for these statistics to really shake out. And I said, I don't think you can really find a true batting average on a player until you get 150 at bats. Well, in high school season, you're not going to get 150 at bats. So we don't dive into it that much. And at the MLB level, every single one of those players are elite players, and they can hit. And at the high school level, you might face a lineup, and if there's three really, really high level hitters that you're really going to have to think about what you're throwing to them, that's a really good team. I think, like I said, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports, in my opinion. So at the high school level, we're a little more simplified.
Yeah. It's you don't have StatCast sending you stats on how fast your outfielders run to fly balls and all that stuff. So,
correct.
It's funny, when I was a kid, it was like, the best players were measured by batting average, RBIs, home runs. That was the back of the baseball card. I'd never even heard of wins above replacement as a WAR as a stat. Are these new stats? Are these empower the fans? Is this going to be the new norm for how we evaluate? Like Tony Gwynn was a great hitter because his batting average was so high. I don't know what his WAR was, but that seemed to be the measurement back then. Is this the new standard measure?
Well, I think people realize that the batting average, it's important, but it can also be fool's gold as well. That's a tough question for me because I think that there's a play. I think it's everything in moderation. And I think what we've done is we've gone from one end to completely the other. And we've turned baseball into basically a computer game where guys are getting hired in these organizations that have never played the game one time in their life, but they're really, really good with numbers. And it's taken a full swing to where it's almost micromanaged to a level that is unbearable to watch, So I think there's a happy medium. I think that these new stats, they do hold value. But I still think, one thing that stats will never show is the ability to compete, the ability to handle adversity, your ability to be a good teammate, a good clubhouse guy. And I'm still a firm believer that you watch any championship team play, when they, we just watched the Super Bowl, when they win games, and they end up winning championships, on that podium, they never talk about, well, I threw for this many touchdowns, or I made this many 3-pointers. What they do is they talk about the clubhouse. They talk about how the team gelled, how everybody got along, how everybody fought for each other. And I think that has been dismissed. And the people that are still able to get a group of men to come together and really fight for each other and care about each other and mesh well, I still think that they're going to hold the trump card over any other team.
162 games a year, 9 innings a game. These games are 3.5, 4 hours long sometimes. I know, in the previous seasons where they've been trying to figure this out. Sorry, let me get back here. All right, I've shared the wrong thing. Here we go. Let me open that up. So, these games are so long, 3.5, 4 hours long. They're, it's just it's difficult. I know when they've done the double headers, they made it 7 innings. And I know that's like sacrilegious to the conservative baseball fan who just thought this is, we cannot do this. But I'll tell you what, I kind of like the 7-inning game. Like the 5th inning seemed to be a lot more important than it used to be. With guys that I know, my friends that are all the people that coach my boys are just like, absolutely not. They're baseball purists. You can't change any of these things. It will change the way of how many home runs you can, as comparison to Babe Ruth and all that stuff. But it just feels like this decision to be so stats oriented, to be so conservative in what we do. Do you feel like the sabermetrics world of this is going to start taking more and more, people away from the games?
Absolutely. I think it already has. I mean, I think when you have guys that are just left-handed specialists, I mean, you're bringing in a pitcher that can only get one type of hitter out. That's not a professional baseball player in my mind. Right. I think that we've taken that have, that are maybe really good at one thing. To me, that's not a professional in any sport. I think a professional is the best of the best, and they're able to compete against anybody that they're facing. And it's gotten to a point where, with these left-handed specialists or just left-handed hitter that can only hit right-hander, it slows the game down because it requires changes. Here goes the chess match again of matchups. And you're taking, you're having a pitching change for a pitcher to come in and face one hitter. And I know the rules have kind of changed where they have to face, but it's still, it's gotten ridiculous, and we're redefining what it is to be a professional baseball player, in my mind. But I absolutely think that it's definitely affecting the game in a negative way. I think that I'm a big fan of shortening it to 7, and what's going to end up happening is just like anything else, is people are going to have to get used to progress, and that's just not something a lot of people are willing to do, especially with a game that people value as America's pastime so much. And we need to understand that this is we're living totally different lives. The world has changed so much from the statistics that they still want to compare us to. I mean, nowadays, these guys, Mike Trout is going to face 75% of the pitchers Mike Trout's going to face are going to throw the ball. Their fastballs are going to be 92, 93 miles an hour or higher. And when you get in the late innings, it's 98 up to 101 nowadays. Babe Ruth could go a whole season and see 95 mile an hour fastballs. So what are we comparing here? I think that the caliber of players have changed. You can look back at Babe Ruth. I think I'm not taking anything away from him, but you look at Babe Ruth's swing. There's no way he's hitting a 98 mile an hour fastball walking in the box and stepping up and hit. So I don't I don't understand the thought process behind trying to compare stats to guys that were riding buses around and playing the game on really hot dogs and soda in their
Right.
stomach, compared to what we have today, where these guys are just machines.
Right.
They got nutritionists, they're weightlifting, it's become it's like watching a whole different sport, and we need to evolve with it.
And Babe Ruth never had to face Satchel Paige or any of the Negro League, Hall of Famers either. Like, I mean, the integration didn't happen until 47. So it's like, but I will say we went to a Ranger game this last year, and they had the Rangers were against the Astros, and it went into extra innings. And normally, by the way, with kids, when I take kids to a ball game, it's already been 3.5 hours. And if it's extra innings, we're taking off. But we stayed because they're putting a runner on second base. This thing is going to be decided in the next. And sure enough, bottom of the 10th, ground ball up the middle, scores a run, and game's over. And it's like some of these things that are, they've changed. I know the All-Star game back, they tried to make it count to where if you won the All-Star game, you got the home field advantage in the World Series and all this stuff. But the All-Star game is the one shining beacon that the MLB has. That's like, it is literally the most viewed All-Star game of any sport out there. Why is that?
Well, I think that, I think that just All-Star weekend, what you're seeing is you're seeing obviously the best players in the league, but and then it's going to draw a lot of attention with the best names. But what you're also seeing is a home run derby, which, that's action packed. That's what people want to see. I think, people can talk about the steroid era in a negative light, and absolutely, it wasn't good that these people were putting chemicals in their body to get bigger and stronger. But man, that was the most entertaining baseball of any of our lifetimes. I mean, I think you couldn't go into a restaurant without people being glued to the TV when Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds were coming up. The offensive production was great. And I think people like home. I mean, you're talking to your casual fan. People want to see home runs. People want to see the best of the best. They want to see 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. I think that's the one thing that baseball is fortunate to be able to do. It's not near of a physical game as far as we're not. Basketball, you're getting in the paint, you're taking elbows, and you're jumping. You can come down on somebody's foot. In football, for obvious reasons, I mean, these guys just played a full NFL season. We're not willing to go out and get tackled again. I think baseball, the nature of the sport allows the best players to be able to go play in the all-star game. I think in these other sports you have guys tapping out just because it's a big risk. That's a big risk to take. You got your whole team dependent on you in the second half of the season a lot of the time. Right. And for you to go out and risk jumping up for a rebound and coming down on somebody's ankle or somebody's foot, and then you're done for the rest of the season. I think that the nature of the game of baseball has allowed the best players to still be able to go out and compete in it. And people want to see the best of whatever profession.
Right. And boy, the home run derby, that I think my kids probably prefer the home run derby over the All-Star game itself. And it's interesting because on the ratings world, the home run derby does better than like the slam dunk contest. It does better than the skills competition for NFL. What is it about the home run derby compared to these other, like not the game itself, but like these extracurricular kind of things over that weekend? What is it? What's the draw there?
I think it goes back just the attention span of what we have now. I think it's nonstop. You're seeing a guy that's getting a pitch thrown to him every 5 or 6 seconds, and they're hitting balls a mile, and you're getting the nonstop action that soccer, that hockey, that football bring to sports, and you're getting it in the baseball version. And I think it's fun to see how far some of these guys can hit baseballs. So. Yeah. I think it's just they put it on a clock. Do
you like that? Do you like the fact that they set it up? I love it too.
I love it. I think that one of the coolest things is looking at that clock and looking at how many home runs the guy has left to hit, and then that's the kind of stuff that games that are played on a clock bring to you. And Major League Baseball games could really last as long as they needed to last, So I think having a version of baseball that's on a clock and that is more up tempo and fast pace is naturally going to draw the attention of more people.
And the baseball purists were just outraged that we're going to put a clock in the home run history. And it's like, give it a chance. Like, I kind of feel like that sometimes. And boy, the one a few years ago when they were in Philadelphia and Bryce Harper was hitting all those off, his dad was pitching to him. And it was like, I mean, my boys were just jumping around the living room, just going nuts about it. But I think that's one of the problems. I think like if I were to put out a survey to my students and I put Mike Trout's picture up with 5 other players in a lineup, and maybe 5% of my students would know who Mike Trout was. I mean, he's the best player in the game right now, and his stats are comparable to some of the greatest players of all time. And yet my students really just don't care. How does baseball market its players better?
That's a really good question, and I don't know if I have the best answer for it. I think that I think that number one, I think our seasons are longer, or the MLB season is longer, and so these guys are tied up and actually playing their season for the majority of the year. And you know what? When their season's over with, they don't really want to go do public appearances. A whole lot of them don't want to do and things like that. And so that would be a guess of mine. Number one is just just the nature of our game. It's 162. You're playing for 3/4 of the year basically, and a lot of these guys, when they're not playing the game, they kind of want to get away from it, and maybe I think a lot of it, some of it, I think a lot of it can fall on the MLB, but some of it can also fall on the players on their time limitations and what they're willing to do when they're away from the field. And right. I think we need to understand that these guys are human beings too, and they have lives outside of baseball. They got kids and families to raise and to be around, and that's just my small guess at it. I'm not really sure. I think that video games, I think that could be a big impact. We see what Madden has the impact Madden's had, NBA 2K has had on these sports, and I think that if I know there's an MLB game, but I don't know if it's popular, or I'm not sure. So
yeah, the show, it's huge. Yeah, my kids, my kids play it and they love it, but they're also already drinking the Kool-Aid of baseball fan, right? So
right.
Yeah. So tell me this, one of my kids' favorite movies, I feel like it's part of my job as a baseball fan and dad to show them baseball movies on road trips. We watched 8 Men Out, and they learned about the 1919 World Series. And of course, we had our conversation next about how Pete Rose didn't follow the big, huge sign on the door of every major league clubhouse that says, if you gamble on the game, you will be banned for life. It's the unforgivable sin in baseball. What impact did the 1919 World Series have on baseball in general?
Well, I think it made everybody question, if these guys are really trying to win, and the nature of competition is that you have two people that are doing everything they can to be successful, and when you find out that one side was throwing a game for other reasons, I think it takes the credibility away from the players. It takes the credibility away from the league, and why would anybody want to watch it? I think that I think NBA went through that for a while with the referees that were skimming points and calling. I think, to me, it's very simple. I mean, people want to see the best go at it, and they want to find out who the number one team is, and if the players aren't willing to do that and aren't willing to compete, then what are we watching here? We'll take our attention somewhere else.
So it really drove me crazy. In 1994, I went to college in San Diego, and I was super excited to be able to go see the Padres play at some point. And of course, the strike happens and, cancels the season. My favorite player, Tony Gwynn, has a 394 average, trying to get back to be the first player to hit 400 since Ted Williams. And then, of course, you have the Expos, which just had a plethora of incredible once in a generation talent, and their season's cut short, and those guys all leave the Expos the next year in free agency. How much did the 94 strike hurt baseball altogether?
I think, I always talk about that Expos team and how talented that Expos team was. And I think it goes back, I think, anytime we're talking casual fans, I think anytime we're seeing rich owners and athletes that are pretty well off bickering about money, I think it's just an off switch to your everyday American, your everyday citizens that are waking up and grinding it out, trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet, trying to raise their families. And we tune in to be entertained. It's an entertainment at the end. It's an entertainment business. And you see people that are whining, complaining, can't get along and can't figure out a way to split up their millions of dollars. And I think it becomes an issue, and it becomes, an off switch for your average person. And I think it impacted a lot of guys' careers. I think it took a World Series away from the Expos. Obviously, Tony Gwynn, it took a benchmark away from him that he was going for. And but I just think that that your average person that's tuning in, they're tuning in to be entertained. They're not tuning in to get into to watch litigation or watch people with a lot better off with financially complain about money.
Right. And it was interesting the next season after that, going in 1995 to see the Padres play at Jack Murphy Stadium and it being just completely empty. I mean, it was, if you're a true baseball fan, it might've been the best year ever to go see a game because you could buy nosebleed seats and sit right behind home plate for $5 because there was just nobody going. The people were so upset about it. But then again, by 98, we get this incredible home run chase between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. You get, it was just, the ball was flying out of the park in an incredible way. And it brought a lot of fans back, but it kind of brought everybody back with like a sugar high to some degree. There was a big crash after that, which was the steroid world. Do you feel like that what happened in 98 was good for baseball, even though there was steroids involved? Or do you feel like, it would have been better for baseball just to come back naturally?
That's a tough question. I think that it's the most fun baseball that's ever been played. I think it was the most entertaining baseball that's ever been played. I think that it drew in more fans. Obviously, I think that it was more of it brought more of the action-packed feel to Major League Baseball that you get from other sports. So I definitely don't advocate the steroid use with the players, but it's really hard. It's really hard to come down on them that much because you understand that, what it did for some of these guys' careers before it all started crumbling down on them. And what it did for the game. Like I said, at that point in time in 98, you couldn't walk into a restaurant without those games being on and not just in their home cities. It was across the country.
Right.
So it's a tough spot to be in because I think I understand it from the players aspect. I think that, number one, I think that you can look and everybody, it's easy to pick out Mark McGwire. It's easy to pick out Sammy Sosa and the guys that were hitting balls 700 feet, it seemed like. But, what people don't understand is that, upwards of, over half the league was taking some sort of
right.
performance enhancing drug, and listen, if it comes down to you putting this chemical in your body that's going to allow you to hit 10 more home runs, there's incentives and contracts. It'll allow you to stay in the big leagues and fly on planes and stay at the nice hotels and rather than being sent down to AAA. So I think it's tough decisions to be made on the players as well. And they were put in spots where it's like, I could add 3 or 4 more years onto my career, which will pay me so many millions of dollars if I do this.
Yeah.
And that's a big decision to make, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people realize, well, I'm sitting in a clubhouse and I know that the pitcher I'm about to face is on steroids. Right. And so he's got an unfair advantage. And if I don't do it, my career is going to be over a whole lot shorter than it would be if I do it.
Right.
And like I said, you get up into talking about, millions of dollars in generational wealth, and you're sitting there going, my grandkids could be taken care of with
Right.
this contract that I could sign.
Sure.
So it puts guys in a bad spot, and obviously these guys are looked at, horribly from a lot of people because they cheated. And there was way more to it in my mind. And it's very easy just to point your finger and say you cheated, but this stuff was going on throughout the game, and it just came down to a point where it's, either you're going to do it and stay in the big leagues or you're not, and your career is going to end early.
Well, and I was a PR intern for the Padres in '96, and I was around King Caminiti every day. I had no idea he was using steroids, and wins the MVP that year. In '98, saw Sammy Sosa hit number 65 at Jack Murphy Stadium, and it's interesting because we were trying to win the division. We went to the World Series that year and trying to win the division, and all the Padre fans were cheering like crazy that Sammy Sosa just hit this grand slam off of us. And I'm trying to explain to Padre fans, we're not supposed to cheer for this, but it was such an incredible, it just kind of swept the nation. But, I think the guy who's sitting in the front row, the most frustrated by the whole 98 thing is Barry Bonds. I mean, he is a guy who for, my whole childhood was the best player in baseball by far. And he got accolades and all that stuff, but he hadn't gotten the hype that McGwire and Sosa had got, so he, of course, after that starts doping and sets the new home run, and this year, of course, is the last and final year that he's on the ballot. Are you a Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame guy, or are you a Barry Bonds should stay out of the Hall of Fame guy? Where are you?
I'm 100% think that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that, like I said, I it's easy to point at the 3 or 4 guys that were just monsters, and here's the thing: steroids aren't going to help you hit a baseball. It's going to help you hit a baseball a lot further. The talent that these guys had, Barry Bonds was on his way to the Hall of Fame, or already a Hall of Famer before he put that stuff in his body. But he also knew, and he was seeing McGwire and seeing other guys in the league that were doing this. And if he wanted to keep up and go after kind of the stuff that, the benchmarks that he wanted to get after, that, listen, I mean, you have to make a decision. I'm either going to do this or I'm not. Right. But I think that these guys were Hall of Famers before they put this stuff in their body. It just kind of took them to a whole nother level. And then once again, I think the mistakes made that you look at these guys, and if they were just huge and ginormous, that those were the only ones that were on steroids. Take a look at what Rafael Palmeiro looked like in his whole career. He looked like your average dad that was walking down the street, but he was doing them as well. I think if most people knew the amount of people that were taking a performance enhancing drug, whether it been an amphetamine, whatever it may be, in the league, I think that they would understand the decisions that these guys made, and the career decisions they made. But I still think that Barry Bonds should definitely be a Hall of Famer. I do think that there's ways to get them in the Hall of Fame. There's ways to get these guys in the Hall of Fame, and do it, whether it be a different wing. This is the steroid era. These guys are Hall of Famers, but you know what? This was an era where steroids were they were covering MLB. They were all over MLB, and but for these guys to not, when you look up, what is it? Is it the strikeout leader, the home run leader, and the forget what it is, but they're not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's just unbelievable. It's
and we allowed David Ortiz in, and he was tested positive as well.
Right. So then what does it become? It becomes a popularity contest.
Right.
Okay. So this guy did it, but he's a nice guy. This guy did it, and he was mean to reporters. He wasn't a very good interview. He wasn't a very nice guy. So we don't like this guy. Let's, and it becomes a joke.
Well, Coach Howard, man, I appreciate your time. This has been fantastic. This is going to be great for my class. I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope they enjoy it. Thank you for having me on. I'm happy to do it, and I'll do it anytime.